Good morning to all. I am Gnanapriya, a botany faculty of Shankar Medical Academy. So today we have a discuss about nucleus. Obviously, you all know a nucleus is the most important organelle in a cell. So this nucleus was discovered by Robert Brown in the year of 1831. So when Robert Brown made a discovery in the year of 1831, we need to know in detail and in an elaborate manner what does actually a nucleus do. A nucleus is control center of the cell. So it is going to control the entire center of the cell. So what does the lines depict? Here the lines say that they are going to control, they are going to present in the center part of the cell. So these lines give an idea that they are going to control, they are going to place the location, they are present in the center part of the cell. So they are only going to control it and they are going to give you all the functions that is going to rely only on the knowledge of the nucleus. So that was the idea behind these lines. So next point, they say that it is the largest organelle of the cell. So as we discussed earlier, we have 2 points that one, it is a control center of the cell, and the second point, it is the largest organelle of the cell. So by these 2 lines, we come to a conclusion that the nucleus is very, very important to the cell. So when you're going to do a cell biology, or when you're going to study about a subject called cytology, whatever the means, we have to have a detailed idea about the nucleus. So first point, as I said earlier, it is the control center, and compared to other organelles inside the cell, the nucleus seems to be the most biggest, and it emphasizes various functions inside the cell. So now we come, how do you classify a cell? We classify the cells basically based upon the structure of the nucleus. So we have 2 types of cells, prokaryotic cell and an eukaryotic cell. When you talk about a prokaryote or a eukaryote, you classify the cell based upon the condition of the nucleus. When the nucleus don't have a membrane, they lack the nuclear membrane, they are called as nucleoid. They are called as what? Nucleoid. So when nucleoid is present inside the cell, we call the cell as a prokaryotic cell. When it has got a well-defined nuclear membrane, it has got all the conditions that is to be present inside the nucleus, we call the cell as eukaryotic cell. So as I summarize what is all we studied earlier, the first point I said, the nucleus is the most important part of the cell. Why I said it is most important? Because it's going to be the control center of the cell. Since it is going to control, it must be the largest organelle inside the cell. Since it is going to control, it has to do various functions inside your cell. Now, based upon the condition of the nucleus, based upon the structure of the nucleus, we classify a cell into a prokaryotic cell and an eukaryotic cell. So when you call a prokaryotic cell, they lack the nuclear membrane. So we call it as a nucleoid. So it doesn't have a membrane. It is a very simple structure. So we call this as a nucleoid. When you talk about an eukaryotic cell, so we call it as a well-defined nucleus. That means what? It has got a nuclear membrane. It has got everything inside the nucleus. And that cell is called as a eukaryotic cell. From the term eu means what? True nucleus. What is eu? We call it as a true nucleus. So I hope you understood what is about a nucleus and how do you classify a prokaryotic cell from an eukaryotic cell. So now we come to the next slide. What does the nucleus contain? I have written some points over here where I'm giving a clear picture of what is inside the nucleus. Let us see. First, we have a nuclear membrane. So what do we have? We have a nuclear membrane. We call the nuclear membrane in other terms called as nuclear envelope. So we call them as nuclear membrane. In other term, we call them as nuclear envelope. And then we have a nuclear pore. Then we have a nucleoplasm followed by nucleolus. And the entity present inside the nucleus, we call them as nuclear material. I hope you people will get confused by saying all the things in nucleus. But the arrival of the success comes under a clear idea of the concept. So like that is what is very important. You can't learn as such. You should know what is the clear difference between each and every term. So by drawing the next diagram, I'll give you a clear picture of what is nuclear membrane, what is nucleoplasm, what is nucleolus, and what is nuclear material. Now we come for the diagram. So now we'll start drawing a diagram. So please join along with me to start a diagram. So this is how a nuclear membrane looks. What did I say a nuclear membrane? A nuclear membrane is nothing but a double membrane. So this we call it as what? Nuclear membrane. Nuclear membrane is also called as what? Nuclear envelope. So what type of membrane it is? It is a single membrane or a double membrane? Obviously, it is a double membrane. Obviously, it is what membrane? Double membrane. Is it clear, students, what is nuclear membrane is? Then we go for the next thing. What is present? Next step, they have a nucleoplasm. What is nucleoplasm? See, I'm drawing this green color thing. So, which shows clearly what is nucleoplasm. This is the cytoplasm of the nucleus. This is the cytoplasm of the nucleus. We also call it as nuclear matrix. We also call it as what? Nuclear matrix. Do you understood? The first diagram that which is I have drawn in the white color thing, which is nothing but the nucleus is enclosed by a boundary layer, and that boundary layer is double membrane. We call it as nuclear membrane, even we can call it as a nuclear envelope. So inside the nuclear envelope, we have a green color jelly-like thing, we call it as nucleoplasm, we call it as nuclear matrix. Now, I said that in intervals, see this part, these places, you have some pore, and this we call it as a nuclear pore. What do you mean by a nuclear pore? As the term itself, in between the membrane, you have some small perforations. What do you call it as perforations? A small gaps or small holes. So we call this as a nuclear pore. So what do you mean by that? This nuclear membrane is not continuous. They are discontinuous. When they are discontinuous, the gaps we call them as a nuclear pore. So what are the things we understood now? Now we know it has got a nuclear membrane, and this nuclear membrane is not continuous. So it has got a pore. Inside the nucleus, when you have a cytoplasm, we call them as nucleoplasm. You understood the three terms now clearly. Now we come for the fourth term. You could see a yellow color, a spherically stained body. So you can see this is a spherical stained body, and this part we call it as a, this part which we basically call it as a nucleolus. So with this part we call it as what? Nucleolus. And they are rich in RNA. They are rich in what? RNA. So now this is nucleolus. I gave you another material, so which we call it as chromatin fibers. This a thread-like structures which is being tangled, so which we call it as what? Chromatin fibers. Now do you understood what is this? The entire picture which you could see, we call this as nucleus. So that white color double membrane is called nuclear membrane. That nuclear membrane is not continuous, so we have a nuclear pore, and the nucleus has got some cytoplasm or a matrix. We call it as nuclear matrix, or we call it as nucleoplasm. Inside the cytoplasm of the nucleus, we have two things. One is nucleolus, the other one is chromatin fiber. This nucleolus and chromatin fiber together called as a nuclear material. Together called as what? Nuclear material. So now you understood what is clearly present inside the nucleus. So to come again from once, I'm explaining again. We have a nuclear membrane, nucleoplasm, nucleopore, nucleolus, and chromatin fibers. This chromatin fibers is also called as chromatin reticulum. So what is chromatin reticulum? It is none other than a genetic material which is present in a form of a network. All the threads are being tangled together and they just get deposited in the nucleoplasm. So that we call it as a chromatin fibers, or in other terms we call them as nucleoplasm. So this is the entire structure of the nucleus. So as I have listed below, that is in the above slide, I have you could have seen that I have given some names like nucleus, nucleolus, nuclear membrane, nuclear pore, nucleoplasm, nucleolus, and nuclear material. So after having a diagrammatic explanation, now you know what is a membrane, what is a plasm, what is a pore, what is a nucleolus, and what is chromatin fiber. So now we'll come in detail to study what is the function of the membrane. So when something is present in something, definitely they have some attributes. Definitely they have some characteristic responsibility to do as a function. So we'll see what is the function of a nuclear membrane. So nuclear membrane is also called as what? Nuclear envelope. It is always single membrane or double membrane. It is obviously, yeah, double membrane. It is obviously a what structure? Double membrane structure. This nuclear envelope was first studied by the presence of the electron microscope. When we were able to have an invention of the electron microscope, it revealed the discovery of the nuclear membrane. So the nuclear membrane is called double membrane. One we call it as inner membrane, the other we call it as an outer membrane. Inner membrane is always smooth. Smooth means what? They don't have ribosomes. They don't have ribosomes, whereas the rough will have ribosomes, so we call them as rough endoplasmic reticulum. So once again, I'm coming in. Nuclear membrane is here. This nuclear membrane is seen through what? Electron microscope. They have a double membrane. One is inner, the other one is outer. Outer is always with a ribosome. Inner is without ribosome, so they are always smooth. When they are being beaded by the ribosome, they seems to be looking very rough. So we call them as rough endoplasmic reticulum. And what is the function of this nuclear membrane? So that will be the next question. What is the purpose of this membrane? They act as a barrier between the nucleus and the cytoplasm. So they act as a barrier between the nucleus and the cytoplasm. So whatever present in the nucleus will not go to the cytoplasm, and whatever present in the cytoplasm cannot make just an entry to the nucleus part. So they act as a barrier. So that was the major functions of a nuclear membrane. Now we understand what is nuclear pore. So we have a second topic. We have a talking about a nuclear pore. So before going for a nuclear pore, I'll have a light on these lines. The space between the inner and the outer membrane. So there will be some space between inner membrane and the outer membrane. We call them as a perinuclear space. We call them as what? Perinuclear. So perinuclear space is nothing but the space which is present between the inner and the outer membrane. What is a nuclear pore? As I said earlier, the membrane of the nucleus is not continuous. It is discontinuous. When it is discontinuous, the places it has got some perforations or it may have some gaps. So these gaps we call them as a nuclear pore. Now the next question comes. What is the purpose of the nuclear pore? Exactly. The answer is they helps in the nucleocytoplasmic exchange. What do you mean by that? Nucleocytoplasmic exchange? Between, there should be some transfer between the nucleus and the cytoplasm. Have a detail. So now do you think, now I construct a diagram of a cell. So when you talk, this is a plasma membrane. The center part, we call it as nucleus, and the blue color region, we call it as a cytoplasm. So something from the nucleus should enter the cytoplasm. Something from the cytoplasm has to make an entry to the nucleus. So both the direction, there should be some exchange. For the purpose of the exchange, we have this nuclear pore. So what in other words, how could you frame it in very perfectly? You could say that the nuclear pore facilitates the transfer. Nuclear pore facilitates the transfer between the nucleus and the cytoplasm in both the directions. So what is the purpose? They helps in the exchange between the nucleus and the cytoplasm in both the direction in an equipoise manner. So that makes a transfer between nucleus and the cytoplasm. So that's the function of the nuclear pore. Fine. Now we come to the next part. What is actually a nucleoplasm is called? So when you come for a nucleoplasm, what do you mean by a nucleoplasm? As we have discussed earlier in the picture, we know that a jelly-like cytoplasm present inside the nucleus, we call them as nucleoplasm. In other words, we call them as nuclear matrix. So what is the function of a cytoplasm? It is the place where all the metabolic reaction takes place. A place where all the metabolic reaction takes place. Same way, in nucleoplasm, we have two things. One, we have nucleolus. The other, we have chromatin fiber. I hope you understood. Inside the nucleoplasm. Okay, that we can make a quick reference by going to the picture. That green color which I have kept as a dot, which is called nucleoplasm. Inside the nucleoplasm, you can see the yellow color one and you can see the pink color one. What does the yellow represents? Nucleolus. What does the pink represents? Chromatin fiber. So now what is the question? First question, what is nucleoplasm? It is in one word. It is a cytoplasm inside the nucleus. The second question, what does it contain? What does it contain? What is the ingredient present in it? So it has got nucleolus and it has got a chromatin fiber. So what is nucleolus is rich in? Nucleolus is rich in RNA. Chromatin fiber is rich in DNA. Now the question comes, the nucleolus is rich in RNA and chromatin fibers is rich in DNA. Now we come for the question. A nucleus is only source of a DNA. Definitely the question is absolutely wrong. So nucleus is a rich source of both RNA and a DNA. If a cell is actively growing, that will have RNA. If it is just a genetic material, it will have a DNA. So what you understand from this? It has got both RNA source, it also got both DNA source. The source of RNA is nucleolus, the source of DNA is chromatin fibers. Is it clear? So these are the contents which are basically present inside the nucleus. So now we come in detail. So now we'll talk in detail about and elaborate the points about what is the nuclear material. Nuclear material is nothing but your nucleolus, nothing but your chromatin fibers. So now we just throw upon the points which has been present on the nucleolus. What is nucleolus? As I said earlier, what was the color I gave you? It was a spherical stained body. What do you mean by stained body? They can take up the dye. So what does I say? Nucleolus is a spherical stained body. What does nucleolus is actually containing? They containing RNA. When it contains RNA, what will be its function? Obviously, it will be a protein synthesis. So they will be present in the active cells. Whenever the cells are growing, whenever the cells are very active, whenever the cells are going to do a physiological function, they will be rich in a RNA. So that's about the nucleolus. Now we come for a chromatin fibers, or we call it as chromatin reticulum. They contain a network of nucleoprotein fibers. What do you mean by nucleoprotein fibers? As you saw the picture, sorry, students. As you see on the picture, you could see the tangled structures. No, this is called chromatin fiber. This is called chromatin fibers, and they contain DNA, RNA, histone and non-histone proteins. So chromatin fiber, as I drawn a structure like this, no, this represents the chromatin fibers. This chromatin fibers is nothing other than they contain DNA, they contain RNA, they contain histone proteins and non-histone proteins. So this structure, like which has been like a tangled, or it is like a wool of threads, like just a bundle of thread which is present, we call it as chromatin fiber. When you take a bundle of threads, that represents exactly a chromatin fibers. Now the question comes, actually now where is the chromosome present? This chromatin fibers are present during the non-dividing stage of the cell. These chromatin fibers are present where? When they are not actually dividing. When a cell is about to divide, they become a chromosomes. This chromatin fiber will change to morphologically into a structure called as chromosomes. So this is about the detailed structure of the nucleus. So once again, repeating the nuclear material, we have nucleolus, we have a chromatin fiber. The nucleolus is a spherically stained structure and they contain RNA and they helps in protein synthesis. They make an actively present in what are the cells undergoing? Protein synthesis. When you talk about this tangled bundle of thread, we call it as chromatin fibers. They also contain DNA, RNA, proteins and non-histone proteins. They are actual structures we are present in the interphase period. We call it as non-dividing cells. Now still, I'll give you still an extensive idea what is actually happens here. When you talk about the nucleolus, they have RNA. When you talk about chromatin fiber, they have a DNA. So all these chromatin fiber structures are present in which period? Non-dividing phase. When they become chromosome during the process of cell division. So when you see a nucleus, the bundle of threads, we call it as chromatin fiber. They are present in the interphase stage. When they become a chromosome, when the cell is about or prior to the division. So this is about the content of the nucleus. In today's content, we talked about nuclear membrane, we talked about a nuclear pore, we talked about nucleoplasm, and we talked about the nuclear material. So nuclear material comprises of nucleolus and chromatin fiber. Nucleolus has got RNA, chromatin fibers has got DNA. Nucleolus is present in all protein synthesizing cell, and the chromatin fibers is the genetic material of the cell which carries the DNA. This chromatin fibers are being present during the interphase. They become chromosomes when cells undergoes a prior cell division. So now we need to talk about the functions of the nucleus. So we have to finish it off with the functions. Because we have a detailed picture of the DNA that is about the nucleus. Now we go to the functions in separate. So as we know earlier, they control all the cellular activities. What are cellular activities? All the physiological functions like metabolism, reproduction, growth. For everything we need a nucleus. And they are the storage of genetic information. That is the place where actually our genetic information is being stored, or which is being loaded, or which is being withheld on. And the process, they undergo a physical process like replication, transcription, and translation. So these are the three important mechanisms of biology. All these three mechanisms are controlled by the control center called the cell. Control center called the nucleus. And biogenesis, you can hear a new term here. What do you mean by biogenesis? As I said earlier, just please listen. We were talking nucleolus. This nucleolus, as I brought, it is a stained body which is rich in RNA. This nucleolus is responsible for making an organelle called as ribosome. Making an organelle called as ribosome. So the process is known as biogenesis. So what is biogenesis? From the nucleolus, they are able to produce a new organelle by the source of the nucleolus. So we call ribosome biogenesis takes place in the nucleolus. Nucleolus is responsible for making this ribosomes. Ribosome is an organelle. So by this, we can give you a clear idea. So what is nucleus? What is the containing of the nucleus? And every ingredient which is present inside the nucleus, like nuclear membrane or a nuclear pore or a nucleoplasm or a matrix or a nuclear material. So they have their own responsibilities for the physiological functions of the cell. So I am winding up the entire concept by again summarizing the points of the functions of the nucleus. They act as a control center. They are the storage units of genetic information. They are responsible for a biochemical reactions like replication, transcription, and translation, followed by they are responsible for a production of an organelle called ribosome. Thank you.